This is Gareth Southgate, and this is the Three Lions podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Three Lions podcast. Welcome to Milano. This is an independent England football supporters podcast. My name is Russell Osborne. I have arrived here safe and sound. Departed Stansted at whatever time it was this morning. It's now 1:15 local time. I did a pod a while back with an airport, like the airport police, who explained the whole procedure when and looking out on match days. There were police about this morning, but not one stopped me to ask my details, where I was going, where I was heading. Pasty white guy, heading to Milan on match day. I was sure I'd get asked. But no. Perhaps I don't look too troublesome. And I'm pretty sure I'm not on a watch list either. But come to think of it, I don't think I was stopped when I went out to Munich earlier in the year. Maybe next time. But it was a fairly decent flight over the Alps. Lovely views over the Alps. Nature at its best. I'm assuming they were the Alps. Are they the Pyrenees? No, the Pyrenees are French, aren't they? Must be the Alps. They're lovely. Swiss Alps, that's right. Italian Alps. Anyway, I'm here in Milan. Sun's out. Shorts, t-shirt weather. I am going to head to the England supporters ticket collection hotel and off for a wander, pizza, coffee, beer, copy of Corriere dello Sport, just like James Richardson used to do on Football Italia. So I found myself in, I don't know how to pronounce this, it's Duomo, I think. It's where the lovely, massive cathedral is. It's like a massive white marble exterior cathedral. I haven't got the time to go inside it, unfortunately, but it looks like you can go inside and get some cracking views across the city. But I've come around the back and there is a football shirt shop and it's called FT Football Team, The Sport. And I'm going in. So I just come out and the woman in there, she said she'd prefer it if I didn't talk and as I was going around there. But if you get the chance to go around there are some fantastic football shirts. They're all, I've got some new ones, like your bog standard Juventus, AC Milan, obviously the Italian national team. You go upstairs and there are some older English shirts. There's an Aston Villa shirt. You remember the shirt that Aston Villa played in? David Platt, Mitre copiers on the front, Umbro Jobby, €250. It's a genuine one. And you think that's crazy, and then you carry on walking through the back and you walk to this little it's almost like a museum, but it's purchasable stuff. There's a Maldini signed shirt in there, Paolo Maldini, AC Milan shirt, away one, white one, €800. It's match prepared, it's not even match worn. €800. There's loads of other shirts in there. There's shirts signed by Aubameyang, Totti, Lampard. There's loads of football shirts in there. If you get a chance to come here, it's just round the back of this church, cathedral in Duomo, and it's called The Sport, FT Football Team. It's even if you keep your hands in your pockets, it's well worth going to. But time's cracking on now, and it's time to head towards the San Siro. There we go. Walking up out of the underground. Very soon there will be a stadium. And there it is, right in front of my eyes. The San Siro. Go through these little turnstiles here. No, mate, I don't need one of those. Thank you very much. I'm all right. Hey, no, I don't want one. Trying to flog me something there. wristband? Anyway, there it is. San Siro. With its... You alright? No, not yet.
Where them yellow
Barriers.
are.
There's Wembley staff around, just helping England fans as they come out of the underground. And it really is such an iconic stadium. It's got these twirly pillars all around it, and these red girders like on the top that sort of stick out of each corner. It's a fascinating stadium for so many reasons. It's not too busy yet. It is, what is it? It's 20 to 7. Kickoff isn't for another 2 hours, but I wanted to get here early to basically take it in. And plus, when I went to Germany recently, it was a bit of a fast getting in. I didn't want that hassle again. I really want to just take this one in because, you know, there's the talk of this stadium not being here in however many years' time. So yeah, this is the San Siro in Milan. Better get some photos, hadn't I? So I said about those circular rampways on the outside. They're almost like what Manchester City have got outside the Etihad. We are walking up them now, and just from the outside, I counted 12 rings that they go up. But yeah, it's quite a mission to get in here. But we went through the checks, and they were right where they said that they were going to check your name against your ticket. They did that, and they thoroughly checked you to the point where the fella put his finger down my socks. Quite what I'm going to stow down there, I don't know, but yeah, but I'm in, no problems. And we have made it to the top. I swear it got darker from the time that we left the bottom to the time we get to the top. Here we are. This says our glass perspex in front of us. We've made it in. What a sight. Let's go up here. Oh my word. This is bucket list stuff. Standing high up behind the goal. We're in the end where there's blue seats, so it's probably the Inter end, I'm guessing. And yeah, you're looking down. It is high, but you can still see everything. And there is... it just brings back all these memories as a kid. Italia 90, which is what a lot of England supporters will remember it for. That first game, Argentina against Cameroon, in what was an ugly match, a real dirty match, and one that Cameroon ended up winning, beating the then holders Argentina, didn't they? And I think actually it was one of these ends, what supporters it was, I don't know, whether it was Inter or AC, they dropped a scooter off of one of these ends, like a Vespa or something like that. Genuinely. It's got all the curves, all the circular windows, this roof all around, the screen on one side where, like this bit where I'm standing at the moment was where it was extended for Italia 90. It's just fabulous to be here. And then down below you look down, as you see on the telly, where all the fans like line up at the front. Loving this. Well, I hope we get a result here. Really hope we get a result. Anyway, let's go flag watching. Colin, Oswestry Wolves. CJ's here, no matter how far. Bristol Rovers. Always here. Another Bristol Rovers. Swindon Town. Mouldy Tours. Love that. Swindon Town. Sam Tyler Jr. Who's this one? Aston Villa. 1874 with the Champions League, the old Champions League trophy on it. Southend United. The Northern Shrimpers. Oxford United. As the goalkeepers run out, It's at Ramsdale, Pope. Leicester City, Dunny on tour. Walsall FC, Gloucester City. We've got a North Macedonia flag. Love that. For those of you that aren't aware, North Macedonia, of course, famously knocked Italy out of the World Cup. Keighley Blues, Southend United. There's a Love England, Love Racism flag as well. Love that. This is a big one. Port Vale. Where you go, we'll follow. Club and Country, Morecambe FC, Shrimps on tour. And then you can see through the stadium across to the city where the lights are of the city are glowing. And we are minutes before kick-off and the stadium is far from full. Empty patches all around. It's sporadic. In hindsight, as much as I love to be here, it's fantastic. It does make me wonder whether they should have played this game in Turin, maybe. I don't know. Because it's not full by any stretch of the imagination. It's a shame, really. It's a shame. Nations League flag has come out to the centre of the stadium. Both national flags have been laid down. We're just waiting for the teams to come out the tunnel. There's the No War Peace sign, which is quite familiar now across international football. And of course, we come now will be the first time that England fans come together to sing God Save the King.
Rise for the national anthem of England.
Italian fans coming towards the front of the stands. They know it.
Take it into the corner flag, won't they? That's full time. Italy 1, England 0. Pretty much the sound of relegation. Awful game, to be honest. Two teams that aren't going to win the World Cup, frankly. A couple of the England players applaud. Harry Kane applauds. Frankly, they haven't done enough. What a way for this new shirt to make an introduction. England fans booing, quite rightly too. Gareth Southgate has just gone to applaud the England fans and was basically booed at. I think that says it all. So it's Monday afternoon. I'm just about to leave for Wembley for tonight's game against Germany. Do you know what? I really don't know what to expect in terms of atmosphere. Sure, it's a great fixture. We know that. But obviously, we've just been relegated. Germany, well, they're assured of third place. It is a textbook dead rubber. For those that didn't go on Friday to Italy, this is, I guess, their chance to express their disappointment at the team, at Gareth, at relegation. But this is the last game before the World Cup to give them a send-off. Do they deserve one? I can imagine. Unless we win by a convincing margin and play exceptionally well, the vast majority are going to leave before full time, and many more right on the whistle, I reckon. And let's not forget, this is also Germany's last game too. They're also going to want to go into the World Cup on a positive note. But I'm reading that Ivan Toney, he's in the matchday squad after being left out for Italy. So he may have just the one cap if selected. And highly likely, less than 90 minutes under his belt. Grealish is suspended. Trent Alexander-Arnold isn't in the matchday squad. Tomori isn't in the matchday squad. Bowen isn't in the matchday squad. Ward-Prowse not in the matchday squad either. What's going on? What a waste of their selection. I genuinely don't understand it. I genuinely feel frustrated for them. I can't fathom what's going on. Germany, well, they've also got players out too. I think Rudiger is suspended. Lucas Checker is injured. And then they had a bit of a COVID issue, didn't they? Goalkeeper Manuel Neuer is out. Goretzka as well. And Julian Brandt have all been sort of affected by COVID in one way, shape or form. Although I guess with Neuer being out, they've got Ter Stegen, Barcelona keeper, to come in. I'm sure you've also heard the fact that only England and San Marino are the only teams to have scored one goal, one penalty goal, that really should be, in the Nations League this time around. It's not often we are compared to those guys, is it? And another stat I heard, it was on BBC 5 Live. John Murray and Ian Dennis, both excellent summarisers, commentators, love them both. In 17 Nations League matches that England have played, we have only won 5 of them. Spain away, Croatia at home, Iceland home and away, and Belgium at home. We've drawn 5 and lost 7 of the others. And who's been in charge for all of those? Gareth Southgate. It's all a far cry from those heady highs of the World Cup and last year's Euros. Anyway, I better crack on. Positive thoughts. I'll catch up with you later. So, I've made it into Wembley after quite an unsavoury and unfortunate incident that I witnessed at the Green Man. Green Man is a family pub just up the road from the stadium. It's a famous pub. It's regularly used by supporters on England days. It's a family pub, or on FA Cup final days it's used by one of the team's supporters. So I was up there today, England fans having just general good atmosphere. There's plenty of beers being drunk. It's a good atmosphere. There's children there. There's women there. People just minding their own business. There's flags up. If you've never been to the Green Man, there is an outside area which is covered, and underneath there were England fans. There were flags hung up, and I was standing just to one side of it. And at one point, the tone of those people underneath the shelter, as it were, was just raised enough to sort of perk your ears up, and you look over there and say, oh, what's going on there? Is there a little incident or something? And then all of a sudden, a lot of people started moving away from underneath the sheltered area, and it got suddenly very quick, and there's picnic tables in the way. People began to fall. Then all of a sudden, the noise and sound of people underneath there got louder, and then unfortunately I witnessed a vast amount of dark-clothed, basically German hooligans. Black hoods, black masks. There were a couple wearing Union flag hats. And all of a sudden, it was chaos. There was a lot of noise, there was a lot of shouting, and basically a group of between 50 to 100 German hooligans smashed and grabbed at the Green Man. People were hurt. People were hurt to the point where there was blood. People were smacked on the back of the head. People were smacked around the front of the face. I've never witnessed things like this before. To the point where, I moved out the way fairly quickly. I was fortunate. I was standing in a position where I could move quickly. England fans were ambushed in a family pub on a game that, frankly, is a dead rubber. There's nothing on this game. We're down. Germany have got nothing to play for. I'm in the ground now with, half an hour to go before. But the police turned up too late, frankly. It's easy to point the finger at the police and say they were too late. But it's a game, England-Germany is high profile. There should have been maybe a police presence there. A lot of these hooligans had gone or had scarpered down an alleyway before the police had arrived. It's an unsavoury event, and I'm adrenaline running to have witnessed it. And, with your hands shake, I'm not a violent person, I'm not interested in getting involved in that. But to witness it wasn't nice. People were hurt, people were on the floor, and questions need to be asked how these people managed to get up through Wembley, through the High Street, up to the Green Man pub, a family pub, and attack England fans. So yeah, that was my experience. That happened at about 5:30, 5:45 time at the Green Man pub earlier.
Please remain standing for the national anthem of England. God save the King. And we would ask you to please stand if you are able as fans, players and staff of the FA and German Football Association now observe a period of silence. This tribute will start and end on the referee's whistle. The full-time score of the UEFA Nations League: England 3, Germany 3.
Well, that was an interesting evening. To go 2 goals down with very little fight, I was beginning to feel the worst. A second half double substitution of Saka for Sterling. Well, I thought I had a good game, to be fair to him. A Mount for Foden, though, changed the game. 2-0 down, 3-2 up in about 12 minutes. The things you love to see. Thanks to goals from Luke Shaw, Mason Mount and a Harry Kane penalty. But to be honest, it was just really papering over the cracks. Jude Bellingham had a really great game, but mistakes throughout at the back just let Germany back in. But given the recent performances and results, I certainly wasn't anticipating a 3-3 draw. I'll get back to you soon when I'm hoping to chat with Dom Smith from englandfootball.org. And here he is, Dom Smith from englandfootball.org. Hello, Dom.
Hi there.
You well?
Yeah, very well. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm all good, thank you. All good. Got this last international window out of the way, as it were, before the World Cup. It's high on the horizon now. It's getting ever closer.
It is, yeah. Southgate said in his press conference yesterday that England have been prioritising performances over results in this international break. And I think that's actually quite courageous, really. If you go 4 without a win and you're a team as big as England over the June internationals as they did, perhaps the tendency would be to go and chase a win kind of come what may. And of course, they would have wanted a win, of course, I'm not saying that. But but it's sensible that they went for the performance, because that's what's sustainable. If you win a game in jammy fashion, that's not repeatable. That's just a single one-off event. But if you have a team that produces good performances, that is repeatable, and that can be used again. I'm not saying England did do that, but I'm just saying it's I'm not saying they did perform well. I'm just saying
that was what their objective was.
Yeah, and rightly so.
Yeah. Well, before Italy, and as this international window was coming up, what were your expectations and thoughts going into it? Obviously, on the back of those 4 June games.
Well, it's difficult to predict any game, because you're always biased by what came recently before, and what came recently for England was some very depressing results. But I predicted that both the games would be tight. I guess in the end that's true. I did expect that England might get a sneaky 1-0 over Italy, and I thought that they might draw or lose the Germany game.
Right.
Southgate will argue that the performances are only a certain... that the results are only a certain aspect of it. They were tight games, but I think England were much better in both of the Germany games in this campaign, if we look at it as a whole, than any of the other 4 games. I think at Molineux, they were against Italy, they were very average. In both games against Hungary, and I'm not just saying this because they lost, I think in both games against Hungary, they were really, really poor. Terrible, in fact. The Italy game the other night was disappointing, really, because England seemed up for it. He'd put out quite a strong team, but they just didn't seem cohesive on the pitch. It was like these were players who hadn't played with each other before. I'm not saying it was as bad as the Iceland game or anything like that, but England weren't penetrating and they weren't creating chances. I mean, I challenge you to think of a number, many chances that England had against Italy in that first half, or in the first half of the second half, and there really weren't many. It was slim pickings in that game, and I think he was pleased, Southgate, and England, the team, will be pleased that they were able to create so many chances against Germany, and yet for many periods they didn't even have the ball. You're watching the first 15 minutes at Wembley, and they were barely touching the ball. But in the end, that didn't end up mattering. In fact, Joshua Kimmich from the midfield of Germany actually said that he thinks it's inexplicable. He said that after the game, inexplicable that England didn't try to play and they just tried to play on the counter-attack. And if he were an England fan, I'd understand why he would be saying that, because going into a tournament, we know how much of international football hinges on possession. Yep. Games against Croatia and the Euros final show how much more important possession is in international football than club football. But that said, it's not for him to decide what England should and shouldn't be aiming for. Yeah. The fact is, England scored 3 goals on the break. I include the penalty because they won it on a counter-attack. And Germany didn't win, did they?
Well, Italy, as you mentioned, like cohesion, there was very little of it. It was a very strange performance, in the fact that whilst we had a certain amount of possession, we just couldn't do anything with it. There was no idea, no sort of thought as to what to do once we got into the final third. The team he picked was, I think it was a 3-5-2. We had Pope was in goal, obviously brought in for the injured Pickford. There was Walker, James, Rice, Dyer, Maguire, Saka, who was perhaps played out of position, Bellingham, Kane, Sterling and Foden. Obviously it didn't go our way. The goal from Raspadori, great goal, I thought, to be honest. And I thought actually Dyer coming in after an absence of 18 months for England, I thought he, whilst England didn't do particularly well, I thought Dyer had a decent couple of games, in fairness to him, I thought. Yeah,
Dyer slipped back into the England team seamlessly, and I think he'll get into that squad now, and quite comfortably so.
I think he's almost knocking on the door for a starting position.
Well, I would have him starting, but the problem is that I would be moving him, and right. I would continue with the back three, actually. because I do think England would concede a stupid number of goals if they played a back four. Doesn't mean that there aren't any good players. There are very good players in this England team. And I don't agree with Southgate on every decision he makes or even most decisions he makes. But I do think they've got the formation right. I do think that 3-4-3 is the way to go. And Dyer, to be fair, he plays in the middle of a three for Tottenham.
Yep.
But I look at him and I look at Stones and I see England's two best centre-backs at the moment, at least. And the problem is they're both very much centre of a three. John Stones, I think, has been more error-prone in the past and I think would adapt if he was shifted out to the left to accommodate Dyer worse than if Dyer was shifted out to the left to accommodate Stones. So I would play a back three, right to left, Walker, Stones and Dyer.
Right.
Because Dyer is an exceptional long passer, and although he's slightly better long passing from right to left, I know that he could still do it from left to right. And I think I could imagine him filling into that Maguire place more seamlessly than Stones would if he were moved there.
So we are looking at removing Harry Maguire then, based on that performance against Germany, or just his general performances for Manchester United and the sort of second half errors that came into his game.
The first thing that the manager said when he came into the press conference yesterday was that he knows that the much of the talk will be about Harry Maguire, but he thought that there were other players that made individual errors and that there were large things to talk about. But I didn't think that enough people asked him about Harry Maguire, actually. And I like Harry Maguire, and I would still take him to the World Cup, even if he's not playing for Manchester United.
Yes,
But I think it's a stretch to now decide that I'd play him. He's England's all-time leading goal-scoring defender. More goals than Bobby Moore and John Terry from defence. But that's not a reason to play him. And neither is the fact that he was in the Euros team of the tournament. A reason to play him is that he's is that he's better than the alternatives. And I don't think he is better than Dyer at this point in time. But I do think he's better than the other options. So I would take him, but I wouldn't start him. I felt that not enough people were asking him about Maguire. It's very easy for journalists to kind of have the obvious story, which is Harry Maguire. And then once the manager gets in the room, they feel that sense of needing to be polite and they don't quite press them on them. So I made sure to ask him about Harry Maguire. And I talked about the back three. And I said, to the manager that he's chosen a back three deliberately to mitigate the risk, that other teams pose. It's sort of a defensive, risk aversity thing. Mm. But given that, and given that he played that, and the number of defensive mistakes that Maguire and the team made, is that not worrying for him ahead of the World Cup, that they're still making that many mistakes in the formation that's supposed to stop those mistakes? And he pretty bluntly said, well, I don't think that the formation was to blame for the goals. And he might think that, and I understand where he's coming from. But he also then basically admitted that he will be continuing with that back three, which I think is informative. Journalists in the Southgate era have spent their whole time, and fans, everyone has, jumping between, is he going to play a back three? Is he going to go back to a back four? The answer he gave me yesterday basically said that he will be playing a back three in the World Cup, and I think he made his mind up on that long ago.
Well, that's what he played, as I say, against Italy and against Germany. Germany, there was just the two changes. In came Luke Shaw, in came John Stones. Obviously, Germany took the lead, 2-0 up, and to me, that was then, oh dear, this could go very wrong. This could go downhill very quickly. Whilst people are talking about the defensive issues that England have got, the one thing Gareth Southgate did get right yesterday was to make the changes when needed, in the fact that he brought on both Mason Mount and Bukayo Saka, who pretty much changed that second half around in our favour.
They did. It's interesting, really. We always talk, don't we?
Yeah.
About England. Everyone does. And especially when a squad and an international break is coming up. We talk about the players in form, and we often talk about the players who are more seasoned England players who are out of form or out of the team sometimes. But this has been an international break to show you that actually being in it's not gone brilliantly for Southgate. He's lost and he's drawn.
Yeah.
They haven't won in a single Nations League game this campaign. But the positive he can take from it is that a number of England's best performers have been players who haven't been playing for their clubs at all or haven't been playing very well. Luke Shaw's been benched by Manchester United and he was one of England's best performers against Germany. Mason Mount came off the bench without an England goal in 15 games and without a Chelsea goal in a while as well.
I have to be honest, when Mason Mount came on, my heart dropped simply on that basis of his Chelsea history and his recent England performances.
Yeah, he's been in poor form, hasn't he?
Yeah.
But that just shows, form is indicative of how a player will play. But at the end of the day, quality is also indicative. And it's not like form is the only thing that matters. If we went on what the people in the phone-ins say all the time, the England team would never, ever look the same.
No.
You'd never get a repeated lineup. You'd have no consistency. You wouldn't have experienced England players. Everyone in the Premier League who's English would have sort of 4 or 5 caps each. Yeah. And that's not right. You need a balance. You need to be reactive to form. He's brought Ivan Toney in. Arguably, he should have played him. If he's going to bring him to the World Cup, he should have brought him on 2 minutes. So he does bring players that are in form. He brought Fikayo Tomori back into the England team. Let's not talk about how much he played, but he brings players back in when they're in form. But you've also got to keep faith with good players. Harry Maguire, many people might not feel is a good player. I would say we're getting to the point now where he's untenable as a selection, at least from the start. Southgate said, "I will only stop picking my best players when it becomes untenable." But Southgate feels that he's a good player. And actually that maybe for him comes before form or even how much game time they're playing.
Yeah, it's certainly coming towards that sort of important decision time with regards to some of those players. But one player who is really now starting to pull up roots and pull up trees, and something that we've been itching to see for a long time, is Jude Bellingham. And I think whilst he was a little bit quiet against Italy, against Germany, he really began to show his class, didn't he?
Yeah, I thought he was very good against Italy and excellent against Germany. And I would start him.
I think we've got to now, haven't we?
Yeah. I think we all, sometimes you go through an international break and there's been someone who's injured or there's been someone who's not been picked and you kind of forget about them. And when all the newspapers do their dream teams afterwards, they're only picking players who were there in this international break and they forget everyone out there. But even when Phillips comes back from injury, obviously he's having surgery on his shoulder at the moment.
Yeah.
Once Jordan Henderson is back fit, I'd still play that midfield too. It's all action. It's completely hard working. It covers every blade of grass, Rice and Bellingham between them. But also, what you get with Bellingham is a perfectly balanced midfielder. He can get himself involved with the dirty work, and he's a very accurate tackler.
Yep.
He can do that as a sliding challenge or as a standing challenge. He can pass well. He's not afraid to pick the short pass if that's better than the long pass that gets an applause from the crowd. And also, when he's caught in further up the field, he can be very dangerous. And that's because he's also got the technical ability that so many England midfielders, central midfielders in the past haven't had. A lot of the reason why Spain and Italy and these sort of nations are able to dominate England in possession when it gets to the tournaments is because a lot of their most technical players at young age groups are not moved straight into the attacking positions. Some of them are kept in midfield and even kept in defence. It's not seen that technical ability, nice touches have to be utilised in an attacking sense. Jude Bellingham got out of maybe a tough spot of 3 players at least 4 times last night with a lovely kind of dummy or jinking this way and that. And that isn't a normal thing for an England central midfielder. I love someone like Gareth Barry, but he was never going to do that as an England midfielder when he was a player. Jude Bellingham is so well balanced. You have to go on someone's quality. You can't go on their age. If he was 16, you couldn't start him because that's too young. But he's not 16, he's 19. If he's good enough, he's old enough.
It's also the part of his game that I noticed last night from sitting in the stands. You could notice him. He's prepared to almost open his mouth and be vocal to his teammates. He's very encouraging, or he's he's showing his teammates around where to go as well. He's sort of dictating on the pitch, almost sort of captain style.
He's not brazen and he's not arrogant.
No.
But he is confident. He has got leadership skills. He speaks so well for someone of his age, and his, he speaks so maturely. If you hear him speak, it's like he's been having media training for 15 years and he's been a seasoned pro for 20. It's absolutely incredible. He's not even been alive for 20 years. You don't pick the England team on who gives the best interview, but I'd put Bellingham in the starting lineup with Rice simply for what he does on the pitch.
Yeah, no, they're turning into be a very good pairing for England.
What I'd also say with that as well, if I can just quickly finish off, is that England will play 3-4-3, and I would play that anyway. But with that, what you lack and what so many England fans want to see is a natural number 10. Where's Maddison? Why don't we have him in number 10? Why don't we play Mason Mount from the start? Why don't we drop Foden in? Why don't we drop Grealish in? People want a creative central player. What I would say with that balanced midfield too, Rice and Bellingham, I would say Bellingham could play as a defensive midfielder or as an outright box-to-box central midfielder or as a number 10. Rice could play as a defensive midfielder, as a box-to-box number 8, and you're pushing it a bit, but he could do a job as a number 10. They're really versatile midfielders. So I think with those two, you don't really lack the creativity that you would if you went with a Phillips and a Rice, which I think is much more defensive.
I think what you're saying, maybe if Grealish wasn't there, I mean, Grealish brings that sort of excitement, that little more excitement that fans want to see. That gets them off the seats.
Grealish is an interesting one because he's actually he's only scored once for England, and it was against Andorra, but he's been a really good England player. And Phil Foden, who's a much better player, I think outright, it's fair to say, hasn't had as good an England career. It's often interesting that how much formations or sometimes even luck comes into it. I mean, Trent Alexander-Arnold, we've talked about so many times. He's not had a brilliant England career, but he's a brilliant player and he's had a brilliant Liverpool career. Phil Foden's in exactly the same camp. He scored in one single game for England. He scored twice early on in his career against Iceland in November 2020. He's not scored since. He never plays particularly badly for England because he's too good, but he never plays particularly well either. Grealish, on the other hand, plays some of his best football for England. And that matters. How well you play for your club is important, but how well you play for England, it is more important.
Yeah, no, because that's what we want to see. We want to see that excitement because that's what gets people off their seats and off their sofa seats and wherever they're watching the games. But I want to just touch on, maybe you maybe know Gareth's thoughts more than I do, but the likes of Ivan Toney, James Ward-Prowse, Kaya Tomori been selected in this squad, most recent squad over these two games, which we're looking forwards towards the World Cup as well. Yet none of them featured at all. I don't understand why Ivan Toney didn't get at least a half-hour, 25-minute run-out against Germany. I mean, perhaps the way the game was going is probably the answer to that, but it just seems such a shame that they've missed out on this opportunity after being given such the build-up to him being selected in the squad. Yeah,
I also would like to see Toney make a cameo appearance in one of the games, and I would have also liked to see England play a back four just to try it out in one of the games. Maybe in Italy, maybe Tomori could have started in centre-back, playing against so many players who fear him every week when he plays for AC Milan. But yeah, it wasn't to be. To be fair, Southgate did say in his press conference after the Germany game that he wasn't going to hand out loads of new caps. He and Steve Holland didn't feel that this was the time to experiment. And I do understand that. And one thing we've learned about Gareth Southgate is that, a lot of people might not think that he's macho or that he's much of an hard man, I guess. But I think he does he has strength of his convictions. You've got to give him that. Whether you agree with his convictions are another matter. But there have been international breaks in the past where you feel another goalkeeper is really pushing to play under Pickford for one of the games, if it's a 3-game international break, and he's just gone with Pickford the whole time. He's called players in, like Tony this time, for the first time and not given them their debuts. It's very much up to him, and he will decide. I mean, what's Ben Chilwell been doing? He's been doing exactly the same this week as he does for Chelsea. He turns up, I'm sure trains very well. I think Ben Chilwell's the best left wing back in the country. I like Luke Shaw, but I think Ben Chilwell's better. They didn't even get a look in. At the end of the day, so I think Southgate probably finds this isn't quite the time to be giving debuts out. And maybe it's time to learn more from the games than about individual players like Ivan Toney. And frankly, he knows about him already. I would have given him a game, but I understand why he didn't.
Fair enough. Well, you mentioned goalkeepers. We've got to touch on that briefly. Obviously, Nick Pope, Newcastle's Nick Pope, played both games, Italy and Germany. I don't think there was a great deal he could have done about the Italian goal, but obviously the Germany game, Pickford's obviously not in because he's injured. So come the World Cup, touch wood, if he's fit and ready to go, he will be number one. But with Pope, there was a couple of instances in the first half where his kicking just wasn't up to international standard, I thought. And then obviously we can pick apart the third equalising goal for Germany. But Pope, he's likely to go to the World Cup, but is he a number 2 or is he a number 3 now? Well,
he'd probably 3, maybe even 4, if Dean Henderson can continue his good form with Nottingham Forest. It's funny about Nick Pope, really. I was on TalkSport a few weeks ago, and I said that Nick Pope won't ever push to be England's number 1, and might not even push again to be England's number 2, because his kicking is some of the worst among any goalkeeper who starts in Europe's top 5 leagues. And instantly there was a caller, there was someone who texted in, a Newcastle fan, and said he's been the best goalkeeper in the Premier League all season. What's this guy on about? But I hadn't mentioned his goalkeeping. I was on about his kicking. And if there's one thing we know about Gareth Southgate, it's that he's going to pick his goalkeepers on who's a positive, able kicker. And Nick Pope, for his usually capable shot stopping, it wasn't necessarily shown the other night, is a terrible kicker. He's a brilliant goalkeeper. England's best natural shot stopper, I would say. But his kicking is lacking. It's lacking in accuracy. It's lacking in confidence. And I mean, Jamal Musiala blocked one of his clearances. He got tackled. You don't need to invite pressure like that.
No, not at all. Well, it's obviously safe to say Pickford will be the number 1. But do we think we know, based on these last 2 games, what that starting lineup will be against Iran come the World Cup?
I think we can have a fair crack at it. I think it will be
Pickford, obviously.
Pickford will start in goal. It'll be Walker, Stones and Maguire. That's the back 3 that's got him through 2 tournaments. There is lucky generals, I suppose.
Right.
Reece James, I think it's fair to say, will start at right wing back. And I think Shaw will be given the position on the left.
You don't think Chilwell will make it through?
No, I don't think Southgate fancies him since Luke Shaw did what he did in the Euros.
Right.
I mean, Luke Shaw had such a good season for Manchester United ahead of the Euros. And that's what got him into that starting lineup just over Ben Chilwell for the Euro. He was then outstanding. And I don't think he's willing to lose faith in Southgate. I think he will play Rice and Bellingham. It doesn't seem very Southgate-y for him to trust someone who's 19 to start, but I think he will. I don't think he trusts Jordan Henderson from the start anymore. But, Pep Guardiola talks about starters and finishers, and I think that's a nice way to think about substitutes. I could see Henderson being a finisher, maybe not a starter.
Well, this is a team game now, isn't it? It is a...
Yeah. Phillips, I don't think he'll start, but maybe. Phillips is going to be very tight whether he can A, come back in time, and B, get back to match fitness in time. If he can, I could see Southgate bottling it and playing Phillips with Rice, but I wouldn't want to see that. I think Bellingham's just too good.
Yeah.
And then a front 3 of, I think he'll keep faith with, well, clearly he'll play Kane and Sterling, but I think he will keep faith with Foden because he's an outright better player than Bukayo Saka. Mason Mount, and Jack Grealish are. Although all three of those have had slightly better fortunes in an England shirt than Foden. But quality shows out in the end, and I think he likes Foden, and he's kind of desperate for him to really turn it on for England. And just as he started him in the early games of the Euros, I think he'll start him at the World Cup. But that's maybe the position in which I'm least sure.
Yeah. Well, we shall see. What you said there: Pickford, Walker, Stones, Maguire, Rhys James, Luke Shaw, Rice, Bellingham, Foden, Kane, Sterling. I think, I don't know, just based on what I've seen over these last two games of Dyer, that perhaps he's done enough to get himself in.
Well, I think he has done enough to deserve to get in, but we're talking about what will happen. I'm not
exactly.
sure.
Yeah. Rice and Bellingham, yes, I agree with, but it may be a case of how Phillips comes along. I understand that one. Foden, Kane, Sterling, it's all like, it is the old guard, really. Like you say, the ones that have got him through the tournaments, through the qualifications, and as we know, he is loyal to those players that have done a job for him.
It's a worry that, because some of the best managers in international football history that they kind of continued to play the players that won them something early on for sort of too long. Joachim Löw did that with a certain generation of the Germany players, and by the end they just weren't as, the national team of Germany just wasn't as good as it should have been because he wasn't able to revitalise and the team and refresh it as much as he should. I think Southgate is in danger of that, really.
Well, the time to do that, I think, would obviously be come the Euro qualifications in the new year. Whether that will be Gareth Southgate's choice to who he picks will remain to be seen. But I think that's clearly a conversation for another time. Dom, thank you very much, as always, for joining us. Always great to get your input on the show, and always welcome along.
Thanks very much for having me again.
Well, many thanks to Dom Smith there for his time. You can find Dom on Twitter at Mr. Dom Smith. And you can also find his reports at englandfootball.org. Next game that England play will be against Iran in the World Cup. We'll be building up to that very soon. Once again, thank you very much for listening. Appreciate you coming along for the ride. I hope you've enjoyed it. Feel free to stay up to date on all the social media channels, Twitter, Facebook. Just search 3 Lions Podcast. You will find it there. So until the next time, take care of yourselves. Cheers.